There we go. Good evening, folks. Welcome to another episode of Spilling Tea. I am your host, Tiffany Daniels. And as you can see, we are going right back into our Down the Rabbit Hole series while we are continuing to deep dive Dr. Andrew Wakefield. And if you remember, this is the committee the council that reviewed the original clinical study that led to the revival of the anti-vax movement starting in the late 90s and into the early 2000s. This was a part of it. The Lancet first afterwards, after they found all the different lies and disinformation throughout the original clinical study, they retracted it from the Lancet. Issue there is as we know, neurotypicals, no shade, but you guys do tend to get most of your news by means of headlines. After an idea has already entered into someone's head, especially one of this level, if you're looking at several years down the road afterwards, like we're talking circa 2008 when Brian Deere's investigative piece on the original clinical study got out there, it was starting to be passed around. People have already decided in their heads what they're going to believe in regard to that. However, it's a little bit more difficult to dismiss an individual whose own UK version of the medical model found him basically using serious professional misconduct. That is something not so easily dusted under the rug. The issue is, what we are dealing with are individuals who cling to this idea are usually fanatics. Now there's levels to fanatics. I've learned this over time. And a good majority of them are the more shout you down type, as opposed to fanatics who tend to be more on the violent side. Silver lining, I know, but still. Even their passive-aggressive version of being true believers causes immense harm. It's not something that is likely to be something that causes outrage on a news clip on your local TV station. So, with true believers, and if you notice it right now, look at our current politicians. Look at all these people backstepping all the things that they full-chested said they believed and supported, all in blind faith. Right? Which means they will find any justification, no matter how illogical or tin hat foily type of explanation it is. And the anti-vaxxers tend to be no different. In fact, you've heard RFK Jr. peddle the lines. What is the lines they always peddle? It's all controlled by Big Pharma, right? Right? Like, any clinical studies done that goes against the anti-vax narrative, they always will never see it as legitimate because they've got their boogeyman Big Pharma. And they're going to scapegoat Big Pharma. They're going to call them manipulators, bullies, rulers almost. When the fact of the matter is, that's just not the case. Now, I'm not going to tell you Big Pharma does not participate in regards to helping fund clinical studies, because that is absolutely a fact. They do. But it is this idea that Big Pharma is manipulating the public in regards to the safety and usefulness of vaccines that makes absolutely no coherent sense. Because what have I told you about Big Pharma? Yeah, they are corrupt. Yeah, they are power hungry. And yes, they are very, very greedy. Okay? And that is the exact reason why they make damn sure every T is crossed and every I is dotted before they do anything. Because you want to know what's more expensive, folks? What's more expensive? To cause doubt in vaccines so less people get vaxxed? Or multiple billion-dollar lawsuits where they have to show out millions, sometimes even billions of dollars to fight lawsuits in order to protect their bottom line? Think about it for a second. It is actually easier and cheaper for them to test and make sure that those vaccines are efficient and actually do what they are designed to do. Because if they didn't, the number of lawsuits that would hit them and the billions of dollars they would have to spend in order to fight said lawsuits would bankrupt even those as rich as Big Pharma pretty damn quick. You gotta understand, there are millions of us autistic and otherwise neurodivergent kids all over the world. Okay? Imagine how many billions of dollars it would take to be able to fight multiple lawsuits from all these individuals. So it is in their best interest to test, yes, RFK Jr., even against placebos, to make sure their vaccines are doing what they are supposed to do. Okay? But anyways, that's why we're deep diving here. But I wanted to mention the true believers because, folks, what you're seeing in the news now is nothing new. I've been fighting the anti-vax movement now for longer than I've actually been a part of the larger disability rights movement. Like, I was assisting in fighting this when I was still in high school. Okay? And these individuals will stretch back so far to grab at any straw man that they can find to somehow make Big Pharma responsible for any study that says that no, vaccines did not cause your kid to be autistic, your genes caused your kid to be autistic. That they will, yeah, you get my point, right? But what that does, something like this does, is for those in the public who are still undecided, that have two brain cells to rub together, to be able to see everything from both sides as they really are. And individuals who are not so inclined to fall into the trap of anti-vaccination will be able to put two and two together and not put their kids at risk by denying them vaccines because of somebody else's almost manufactured hysteria, because none of this needed to happen. It really didn't. But anyways, disclaimers real quick into trigger warnings. Folks, in regards to the Down the Rabbit Hole series, every little bit of information, every single source, you are going to find while we go throughout the entirety of these series, is you're going to find it right there in the description box for you. Both label and link so that you know what you're clicking on. That way, if you'd like to deep dive into this subject on your own, you will absolutely be able and welcome to do so. Trigger warning. We do have this channel marked not for kids for a reason. We use profanity, and we do cover some dark topics like the Judge Rotenberg Educational Center. So, if you have young ones who are 16 years or younger and they are watching this, parental supervision is advised. Political trigger warning. If you are gung-ho MAGA or gung-ho leftist, you should know that I am not either one of those. And more than likely, throughout the multiple series that we are currently covering on this channel right now, I am more than likely going to say something that is probably going to offend you. If that is not something that you are going to be able to handle in an adult manner, if that is the sort of thing that is going to lead you to the comment section and post stupid crap like you must have TDS, or you want to ask, but what about your family and their responsibility, then this is not the channel for you. And if you engage in that behavior in my comment section, I will remove you from view from the rest of the individuals, the few who watch this channel. And I will block you, because quite frankly, nobody has time for that. I do welcome honest debate. I welcome anyone who's willing to come to the comment section and debate upon the facts. But ad hominem attacks and personal attacks, I do not allow. Ableist attacks will not be allowed. Okay? Nobody has time for that. Alright? Good. Alright. So where we left off, Dr. Andrew Wakefield determination on serious professional misconduct, May 24th, 2010. So this was when he got his, Dr. Andrew Wakefield got his license to be able to practice medicine revoked in the UK. So, we're going to reread a paragraph that I probably already covered and go again and continue on. The panel concluded that the program of investigations that these children were subjected to was a part of Project 17296. It further determined that the conditions for approval and the inclusion criteria for that project were not complied with. The Ethics Committee reliance on the probity of Dr. Wakefield as a responsible consultant was not met. Alright, let's continue. With regard to 9 of the 11 children, 2, 1, 3, 4, 6, 9, 5, 12, and 8, considered by the panel, determined that Dr. Wakefield caused research to be undertaken on them without ethics committee approval, and thus without the ethical constraints that safeguard research. In other words, he went forwards without notifying the ethics committee, because you have to get approved in the UK before moving forward to make sure that everything complies with the general ethics of the practice, alright? Ethical constraints are there for the protection both of the research subjects and for the reassurance of the public and are crucial to public trust in research medicine. It's pretty much something that every clinical study in one way, shape, or form, depending on the country, has to conform to. Because, yes, if you have an individual that is bypassing the ethics committee while conducting a study, that does send up, like, all the alarms. All the red flags are there. Because why wouldn't you approach the ethics committee in order to get approved first? Why were you pushing and bypassing them? Is there something that's going to be done within this study that you don't want them to know about, and why? Shady, right? Exactly. Let me continue. It was in the context of this research project that the panel found that Dr. Wakefield caused 3 of these young and vulnerable children, numbers 3, 9, and 12, to undergo the invasive procedure of lumbar puncture when such investigation was for research purposes and was not clinically indicated. In other words, he went ahead, he made the order for the lumbar punctures, he did not run it by the ethics committee. And by the way, lumbar punctures, folks, is not just something that's like a brief little shot. It's painful. And yeah, you would want somebody to know on the ethics committee that this was being done so that it could be monitored to make sure they're not doing anything that's going to make those kids unsafe. This action was contrary to his representation to the ethics committee that all procedures were clinically indicated. In the 9 of 11 children, 2, 1, 3, 4, 9, 5, 12, 8, and 7, the panel has found that Dr. Wakefield acted contrary to the clinical interests of each child. The panel is profoundly concerned that Dr. Wakefield repeatedly breached fundamental principles of research medicine. It concluded that his actions in this area alone were sufficient to amount to serious professional misconduct. Definitely. Alright, let's continue here. The results of the research project were written up as an early report in The Lancet in February of 1998. Dr. Wakefield, as a senior author, undertook the drafting of the Lancet paper and wrote its final version. The reporting in that paper of a temporal link between gastrointestinal disease, developmental regression, and MMR vaccination had major public health implications, and Dr. Wakefield admitted that he knew that it would attract intense public and media interest. He's being completely irresponsible with the overall public health. You want to know why measles are on the rise? It's not because of immigrants. It's because during the 90s and into the early 2000s, this guy convinced people all over the world that the vaccines were what caused people to become autistic. And autistic has been presented like such a great big boogeyman that desperate parents were clinging to any answer that they could find. It doesn't help that the way media portrays things, it makes it seem like my diagnosis is worse than death itself. Well, I'm here today alive to tell you I'd rather be alive than killed by a disease that was 100% preventable. Just saying. The saying is all. That is massively irresponsible, and it can and has global repercussions. The potential implications were therefore clear to him, as demonstrated by his correspondence with the Chief Medical Officer of Health and reports which had already appeared in the medical press. In the circumstances, Dr. Wakefield had a clear and compelling duty to ensure that the factual information contained in the paper was true and accurate, and he failed in this duty. Think about the damage that this one man has caused. An individual who was not an expert in any way, shape, or form in regards to any developmental disability, let alone had any type of certification or licenses in regards to being an expert on the diagnosis of autism. It is bizarre that this individual, who had a completely different specialty, even decided to conduct such a study in the first place. But the fact that he was one of the leads on this clinical study while having absolutely zero credentials to prove that he was an expert in regards to anything in regards to those of us with developmental disabilities, but especially no experience in dealing with any of us neurodivergent folks, this should have been dismissed out of hand. It's ridiculous that what happened actually happened. But let me go ahead and continue here. The children described in the Lancet paper were admitted for research purposes under a program of investigations for Project 17296, and the purpose of the project was to investigate the postulated new syndrome following vaccination. In the paper, Dr. Wakefield failed to state that this was the case, and the panel concluded that this was dishonest, in that his failure was intentional and that it was irresponsible. His conduct resulted in a misleading description of the patient population. This was a matter which was fundamental to the understanding of the study and the terms under which it was conducted. In other words, he even lied about the premise of said clinical study before he began conducting it. He had a goal. He misrepresented that goal to the council. Yeah. But we're going to trust him, right? It's a clown world we all live in. It's getting more clownish all the time. In addition to the failure to state that the children were part of a project to investigate the new syndrome, the Lancet paper also stated that the children had been consecutively referred to the Department of Pediatric Gastro and oh my gosh, I'm going to butcher this, but we're going to give it a go. Gastroenterology, with a history of pervasive developmental disorder and intestinal symptoms. This description implied that the children had been referred to gastroenterology department with gastrointestinal symptoms, and that the investigators had played no active part in that referral process. Yeah, that doesn't work when the lawyer involved that was referring these individuals to Dr. Wakefield was already involved with Wakefield due to the lawsuit that he was asked to be a part of as a consultant on a legal case that said lawyer was filing with Big Pharma. All the red flags. Covered in red flags. My God. In fact, the panel has found that some of the children were not routine referrals to that department, in that either they lacked a reported history of gastrointestinal syndromes and or Dr. Wakefield had been actively involved in the process of referral. In those circumstances, the panel concluded that the description of the referral process was irresponsible, misleading, and in breach of Dr. Wakefield's duty as a senior author. In other words, he lied. He literally lied to everyone. It was his duty to make sure that when he described what he was doing in regards to his clinical study, what his purpose was, and what he was trying to find out, he lied his face off. He lied about the individual kids and why they were referred to him in the first place. He lied that these kids had these symptoms right after the shot, when, as a matter of fact, many were already displaying symptoms before the shot even took place. It is shown, as all of us have seen going through that paper, that it wasn't regressive at all. What was happening was these kids were missing developmental markers as they were beginning to get older. When that happens, that is not regression. That is a developmental delay. which is an entirely different animal. You can't regress from something you never actually reached as a milestone in the first place. And guess what, folks? Words matter. The difference between someone regressing and a developmental delay matter, especially in medicine. So yeah, there is professional misconduct all over the place. But we are going to go ahead and close out for now, and we'll pick it back up again on next Friday, starting with the statement in the Lancet paper. You can kind of see the next paragraph underneath there. In the meantime, we don't get very many views on this channel, and then the few we do tend to get removed from time to time. So if you would be so kind, please don't forget to hit the like button, hit subscribe, and especially don't forget to hit the little notification bell. We've got several series going on, and I don't want you guys to miss an episode. Tomorrow is Saturday, of course, so we are going to be going back over to our Medicaid series. On Sunday, we'll be going back to Section 8 again, and as usual, we post every single day on the Judge Rotenberg Educational Center and the abuse they lay down on multiple generations of disabled kids until they finally go the way of the dodo. So, please make sure that you do get that notification bell clicked on there. Alright? I appreciate your time. And as always, folks, we here at Spilling Tea hope you have a good one. I will see you all tomorrow for the Medicaid series. Bye-bye now.